they give an answer. The first few days, obviously, they make more sales because people have pre-orders and things like that. I can imagine if it's true that they sold only 40,000 on an opening day after all this advertising, many people will say there is no way they even reached 1 million sales after almost a month or about a month. So I kind of look at it with kind of, I think it's wonderful news for any person who doesn't want proprietary phones to be spread around. And in this case, it also means kind of a bit of bad news because Microsoft also, in interviews now, talks about the use of patents to make money in the mobile market. So Microsoft talks about becoming a patent troll because if they do not manage to sell the phones sufficient numbers, it will become more like the Zune, so they might kind of keep it around so that technically they do still kind of compete against companies, but if they do cancel the phones like they did with the King previously, they officially become a patent troll.
Well, it highlights a little bit of an off-topic subject, and I think it was something Gordon mentioned a few episodes ago, and we saw it with the Windows 7 party ads when it first came out. They were offering goodie bags and enticements and prizes and gifts and all sorts of things. Now, if we look past those wooden adverts, which I believe Joe Wilcox made some reference to vomiting in those adverts because they're so wooden and so contrived. It was something that Gordon mentioned, I believe, about 2 shows ago, and it was that it appears that Microsoft needs to generate its own interest with enticements, with prizes, with gifts. You look at Linux, and when Canonical released a new version of Ubuntu, you have these Ubuntu parties springing up, and lots of other distros have parties that just on the fly spring up and people get together and install free software. Yet it appears when Microsoft wants to do the same thing, nobody really steps up to the mark and does it without having to be enticed or I don't want to use the word bribed, but encouraged via gifting in order to promote their products. I was talking to somebody, a friend of mine, who got one of the Windows 7 party packs, and I'll quote him directly. I said to him, why did you apply for a Windows 7 party pack? And he says it was to get one in the eye of Microsoft. And he actually did get a signed copy of Windows 7, and he is, to be fair, and for purposes of disclosure, a Windows user. But the sole purpose of showing an interest in wanting to host one of these parties wasn't because he had any love of Microsoft products. It was really just to get his hands on a freebie, and I think that sort of sums it up for a lot of the advocacy we see with Windows and with Microsoft products in general, that without any sort of enticement, they can't generate the interest. You look at something simple like the lug groups that are up around the country. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see any Windows groups like that popping up all over the place. I said last episode, I think there's a lug group just down the road from me, and I don't see any groups where Windows users get together and talk about Windows and not just Windows, just a social thing. So I think that's a good sign for free software. I mentioned it on one of my articles recently, that I'm seeing more and more of this. People are actually genuinely excited and interested by free software and Linux and contributing to part of the community. And I think Microsoft is trying to latch onto that a little bit when it has slogans for Windows 7 and things that imply that their users were responsible for the platform, like Windows 7 was my idea. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite work because people know that I don't think there's a single user that contributed to Windows 7. It might have been as a result of sales for Vista and complaints, but I don't think you certainly don't have the input with Windows 7 like you would with, say, Wolvix or Mandriva or a distro on Linux. It's not the same type of community. So I just wanted to throw that in very. Sorry, Rod.
Yeah, I wonder. I wonder though on the support, the Windows community thing. I wonder if it's built along the same lines as like resistance cells, where you don't know the other cells. So you could be standing talking to someone who is also on your side, but because you can't reveal yourself and they can't reveal themselves as being on the same side, you don't know. So I wonder if the people that are hosting these parties, the people that are trying to promote that Windows products because they're paid to, or because they've got some incentive to do so, some like free license or whatever, free Windows Phone or whatever it is, free Zune player or whatever it is, I'm wondering if they see all these other people who are all doing the same thing, unbeknownst to them, they're also doing it for the same reasons.
Yeah.
And they actually see it and say, oh, it is really popular, I'm justified, I'm not just taking the money, that's fine, I can do that, but I can rest my conscience, unaware that everyone's doing the same thing, and they're just not telling each other. They're all hiding the copyright of Microsoft
Well, I
symbols
thought
on their blogs.
I thought that with the Windows 7 party, we just go back to that. I thought that we were supposed to be seeing all these videos and things of people's parties, and to my knowledge, I haven't seen any. I don't know whether because it was a completely failed campaign or whether there was just nobody that submitted any home videos. But I understood it that people were to produce their own videos of their hosted parties. And I mean, for listeners that don't know. This whole scheme was dreamt up whereby you apply to host a Windows 7 party and you get a goodie bag sent to you full of, and to be fair, the crap was what it was full of, balloons and things like that. And there was a very wooden acting advert that accompanied it where you were supposed to promote obviously Windows 7 and show how great it was, etc., etc. But part of that was that users were supposed to be sending in videos of these parties, and we never actually saw, and I never saw the results of those. I don't know, Gordon, did you see any, or Roy? Did you come across any of these?
I don't think many people actually use the operating system. I mean, speaking for myself, maybe about 1 in 10 people use that I see, or maybe less than that. And recently I found some numbers about China. Now, what would you think about China's usage of what would probably be a free operating system, free as in gratis, as in free beer? Well, you probably would think, all of them to basically just move to the next version. And download.
Well, I wouldn't say you said that. Obviously, I get the impression that it's not going to be as good. But yeah, I would have expected.
It's about 10%, which is similar to what happens in business, or at least was the case in businesses some months ago. Talking about 3 months ago, Dell said that it was under 10% in businesses. And this relates to, we talked about how Microsoft was manipulating the numbers. And they don't actually, obviously the numbers are fake. The numbers they talk about, number of sales, or what they mean by sales is basically the number of licenses issued, as in, well, we gave some numbers to someone, and they could install it if they want to, but they don't do that. But also they play with revenue numbers to inflate the numbers and then give the impression that they increase in terms of sales, but they don't do that.
Well, funnily enough, I was saying about sort of passion of users, etc. The one time you do actually see Windows users with a bit of passion is when talking about XP. I mean, certainly the forums I've been looking at, you get a lot of people who are very reluctant to leave XP for any upgrade that Microsoft wants to offer them. And I think that's the one example of passion about Microsoft product when you look at the Windows community, as it were, and people wanting to stick with XP. And I don't think Windows 7 has captured the market I don't believe it's captured the market like Microsoft intended it to be, intended it to. But I think the users themselves are wanting to stick with XP, and now we're seeing sort of a bizarre Windows XP type advocacy where people don't want to move on to this new platform, new product that Microsoft's offering them, and I think that's very telling as well. But that was just an observation, and that's a very unscientific observation from my views of Microsoft forums, or Windows forums anyway. Sorry, Gordon.
Well, this might be a little bit of a divergence, but you remember Project Mojave?
Yes.
I think Microsoft really annoyed a lot of people with Project Mojave. And for people that don't know, what that was they launched Vista, and it got such a bad reputation that people were rejecting it. Even in the mainstream, people who didn't know very much about computers had heard this Vista thing is rubbish, and I'm just going to bypass it. And instead of actually taking lessons on board and saying, right, okay, let's go back to the drawing board on this one, we really screwed up on Vista. Right, what are people saying will improve it? Rather than do that, what they said, they launched this thing called Project Mojave, which was basically about changing people's perceptions about Vista. So what they did was they changed the skin of Vista, they tarted it up, they changed a few things, they installed it on, I would imagine, really fast, high-end gear, really got Microsoft's engineers really to tweak the performance, and they filmed people secretly using it. And then for, I don't know if it was like 15 minutes at a time or something, you filmed them you doing very specific things like browsing the web, doing email, chatting on live messenger, and some working a webcam, that type of thing. And then after that, 15 minutes of very controlled use cases, they sat them down and they had, before they used it, they would ask people their perception